Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. His Dark Materials is a BBC show about Lyra heading up north to find her heretic dad, Lord Asriel, and make sure that he doesn't get dead from all the baddies from the Magisterium. Episode 8 starts out with something that I totally forgot to mention last week, and that was that Mrs. Coulter and the bald priest had this whole massive task force, and they were heading up north to kill Lord Asriel, as I said, and it's been understood that he's not going to be allowed to survive. Oh. So anyway, they're going all sorts of like SEAL Team 6, and she's like idling her time by telling off the priest or sitting scratching her beastie. Anyway, Mr. Badchurch is chatting away to his creepy mate, and it turns out that the alethiometer results came back, and the key to everything is actually Grumman's son Will, and he's going to discover some kind of magic knife. Sounds a bit subtle. Anyway, Badchurch is less happy that Chernobyl guy died, and he tells off the other dude, and it turns out that he's actually a policeman. Yeah, and so he puts out like an APB on Will so they can find him, and Will's all like hiding from the cops, and he ends up on a very familiar street. And while he's there, he finds a wee cat, and he follows it and sees a strange bit of light, and then he steps through. Meanwhile, Lyra and her dad aren't getting on at all. Yeah, he's not got much time for her, and like she just wants to give him the alethiometer, get some answers, and then go home. But he's like, nah, doll, I mean, I'm a crap dad, yeah, sure, sue me. And cheers though, but yeah, you can hang on to the alethiometer. So it's all a bit odd. So she has like a bath, and then she has a chat with Roger, and they end up like playing camping in tents and stuff, and it feels a bit like old times. But then that night, Asriel wakes her up and tells her all about what he's doing and how he's seeking out dust, and that dust's actually original sin, and he wants to find out where it comes from. And he randomly mentions that like how the cutting of demons gives off like a huge amount of energy, which he just kind of tosses in there, and it's not suspect at all, or any kind of exposition. But then Lyra gets woken up by Colum off Outlander, who's going to like get her the hell out of Dodge since the airships are actually nearly there. And it turns out that her dad and Roger are already gone, so she immediately realises that he's going to cut Roger's demon away somehow. I mean, that's quite a leap, but yeah. Anyway, luckily Oric's hanging out outside, and he like spawns in with a whole load of bear troops, and then it's a mad chase to the mountaintop, and they end up having a huge fight with Magisterium goons, with like the polar bears using all kinds of like rocket launchers and stuff. And Lyra and Yorick make it away until they get to a wee narrow ice bridge, and he can't follow her across. So she goes away ahead, and she gets just to the top of the hill, exactly at the same time that her dad, who's popped Roger in a cage, manages to cut his demon away, and it's horrible, and she's too late to stop it, and she sees Roger die and then gets blasted down the hill by the energy. And then Asriel's just about to go through, and Mrs. Coulter arrives. All alone, no troops. And then it turns out she's not going to kill him because they still kind of fancy each other. But she says that she doesn't want to come with him to the other worlds because she needs to stay here for Lyra. But he's like still dead set on going through and bringing about a big war on the authority. Yeah, like literally that's his plan. It's not just to find out about dust. He literally wants to go off and punch God in the face. I mean, it seems sensible. A bit like Preacher, but it seems sensible. And anyway, whoosh, he's away, and Mrs. C goes back down the hill, leaving Lyra all alone with Roger's dead body, feeling guilty and sad about everything because she blames herself. So she promises that she's going to stop them all by finding the dust first, and with that, Lyra and Pan step through the portal. And the end of Season 1. So what did I think? Well, I mean, this is actually the bit I've kind of been wanting to see. As I've said last week, and I've said a couple of times before, the movie version of this, for strange reasons, didn't feature the ending. I mean, despite the fact that apparently they filmed most of it. They just, they decided a couple of months before it came out just to scrap, however, all the special effects that they were doing at that point and just not bother. And what's really interesting is online, you can actually find a version that people have cobbled together using like clips and photos and storyboards and little animatics and stuff. And it's really fascinating. I mean, sure, it wouldn't have looked exactly the same as like what happens in the show, partly because, it's only about 10 minutes long as opposed to like a good chunk of an hour that the TV show does. But how it could have been done in a slightly different way. And it's quite interesting. Daniel Craig's version of Lord Asriel is kind of different.
No! Get back! I didn't send for you. Anyone but you!
And, I think it might have been a better ending for the film. I don't think it would have actually made it set the box office on fire. I think it was doomed anyway. But I do think it's an interesting place to end the story, particularly as the BBC show has included all the Will stuff. I mean, I mentioned before as well that the Will stuff's actually from the start of Book 2, The Subtle Knife, and by tying it into this season of the TV show, it's gotten a lot of that out of the way. And that means the adventure can continue at the start of next season straight off the bat, with both Lyra and Will in, like, brand new worlds. And, I think that's going to be really interesting. I also like the fact they used like some of that quieter, sneakier stuff to like complement the more brass fantasy of what was going on in Lyra's world. Will hiding from the police and stuff. I'd also like to totally do a shout out for Roger. He's played by a young actor called Ben Walker, and this guy's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, total kudos to the actor. I haven't really mentioned him that much, but I mean, he's been great all the way through the show. And like last week, he was doing proper like emotive cry acting, and this week, like we really felt that we were starting to get to know him, and then just at that point, he gets snatched away in a horrible death scene. It's like cool, the pair of you are going to be pals. Oh, Roger got dead. I thought that was a really good idea, and again, it was really well done. And I hope he goes on to do other things because he's clearly got a lot of talent. And I also like how they intercut the ending between the two of them and managed to tie everything together emotionally with the doorways and Roger's death. Yeah, I mean, it was all pretty good. I also absolutely loved like the big bombardment bit with like the Svalbard bears like fighting against the Magisterium. I mean, come on, that was just a bit of fun. It was a good laugh, and it was nice to have that little bit of just action at the end of it. I mean, I didn't hate anything this week though, but I do have a few little grumps. And one of them was that Daphne Keen's work was, unfortunately, as I've said a few times, as kind of up and down as it tends to be. Sometimes she's really, really good. Sometimes she's a little bit kind of flat. I mean, she was fantastic in that final scene. I mean, really, really good, like sitting crying over Roger's dead body. But then there was a scene where she was like telling her dad off, and that came off as a bit janky and awkward rather than it being real anger.
All the way from Jordan College. Fought the Magisterium. Enlisted the witches, fought the bears, all to bring it to you. And you refuse it? Call yourself a father.
I mean, it's probably hard to be angry at Professor X when you're X-23. I mean, I'm just saying. Anyway, also, they did that whole thing again where Mrs. Coulter is just cleverer than everybody else, and it felt a bit fake because it's okay, it's like this is going to be a strange thing. It's going to be like, see, when you're playing a computer game and somebody's got on a different difficulty level, so they're just able to do things, or like one of those books you read, which is based on somebody's Dungeons and Dragons game, like a fantasy novel, and then things happen in the story, and clearly it's because when they were playing the game, one guy just kept doing really, really good dice rolls and kept winning. And granted, if you've never played Dungeons and Dragons, that's not going to make any sense. But in any case, you've got the bit with her doing her whole sort of "I know what you're thinking and I know everything about you" speech, and it just seems to be confused and angry because the script says so. And she does exactly the same thing with Colin later on, and he doesn't shoot her, which begs the question of why Asriel has such faith in a guy who's so absolutely inept. I mean, maybe there's a history between these characters, but the problem is all the way through the show they've done that with Mrs. C. She's been this person who the show keeps telling us knows everything. So she walks up and goes, "I know everything about you," and the person goes, and then that's it. And you're like, "Oh, okay, I guess she does," but I don't really buy it. And the show did the same thing with the cop Badchurch, like mouthing off at like the policeman. Now, I mean, surely you've met police folk, I've met police folk. Now, even if the guy was scared, he's going to get in trouble because he's broken a law. I don't understand why he's quite so cowed by Carlo. I mean, he's a big guy, and also he's a police officer. Even if he's doing something janky and against the law, it seems a wee bit crazy for him to just be quite so submissive and upset about it. And that just seems like they're doing the whole thing of going, right, you've got to think that Badchurch is this big scary guy and you should really be worried because everybody else isn't. It's like that's not how TV shows work. You've got to actually show him being scary. And yeah, granted, he did sort of squish that butterfly earlier in the season, but that was just more because she seemed to be a bit daft. I mean, she could have just totally done a runner. She was in the middle of a public street. It was all a bit strange. And also, as I said, like there was a whole clunky clunk bit of the "this is dust" scene, and not the dust bit as much, but more the whole bit that you just dropped in, the whole Cutting's going to do a big flash explode thing, and that info dump was really clunky. I mean, it seemed crazy, that he would say that out of like literally like apropos to nothing, and then she was going to suddenly realise that that was what it was on about, so that she was immediately going to know that he's talking about doing that to Roger. And I mean, I suppose it doesn't help that last week James McAvoy had that total rabid look on his face when he saw Roger. But yeah, it's not too bad. And I'm really interested to see what they do with the show next season. Because I mean, the second book is arguably probably the best. We'll not talk about the third book just yet, but yeah, anyway, the second book's really the best, and it features a lot more jumping between the worlds and new situations and new characters and events. And I can't wait to see it. And I'm also wondering what other shows are going to adapt for the BBC, because now that they've done basically pretty much every well-known fantasy novel, so unless somebody writes something new. So with that, I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday, like a Christmas or Hanukkah or Yule, solstice, whatever it is that you do at your house. But yeah, so if I don't see you before then, have a fantastic Hogmanay, and absolutely have a really good time. Until next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.